Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of With the Prophet. I'm Ali Coleman. I'll be your host for today's show. We are joined by a special guest, continuing with Sheikh Azam Al-Hakeem from Saudi Arabia. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Honored to have you with us to continue our discussion about how we should stay with the Prophet in our daily lives, and we're looking at the Sunnah, his example, peace be upon him, on how to do that. We've been talking about family members around the Prophet ﷺ, and today we look at another group of members of the society around him, his servants, both within and without of his home. I'd like to start by describing the context that I'm coming from, my home country of the United States. Generally, those families, those households that have permanent domestic staff are affluent families. Middle class families may hire domestic help on an as-needed basis, but it is much more commonplace in developing countries in Africa and Asia and Latin America. Even among the poor families in these developing countries, I've been there, I've seen it with my own eyes. On the subject of servants and slavery and labor laws and all this kind of thing, some make the case that slavery never ended. There are many modern forms of slavery. Even the middle class are indebted heavily, such that they have no option but to continue to work for the rest of their lives. There are very, in terms of economics and finances, very few truly free people in the world. My question is about the context of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the 7th century on the Arabian Peninsula. What was, please describe for us the situation for the servant, the difference between the servant and the slave in this time context.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala abdihi wa rasulihi al-Amin. Nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. The issue of slavery needs to be looked into with an objective mind. And I say this because the minute I open my mouth and I say slavery, people have goosebumps.
It's a hot button issue.
Yeah. And especially in the United States of America.
That's right.
And in Europe, where over the past 300 or 400 years, there were atrocities. There were crimes committed when they used to go to Africa and snatch people, steal them, abduct them unjustly, and imprison them in boat trips that were horrific. So many people died, and once they reached the promised land, they were dealt and met with things that are we cannot even speak about or imagine.
Right.
Now this took place, but this also caused people to have a way of looking at things that may affect their objectivity. When we look at slavery in Islam, we have to understand that we talk from a position of power.
Okay.
Our religion comes from Quran and from the Sunnah. So it's not something that is man-made, and it's not something that can be changed over time. First of all, this is the example I usually give in my speeches and lectures, that Islam is like a frame, and our lives is like a picture. The picture contains our desires, our needs, our misconceptions, our superstitions. So when a true Muslim wants to become a Muslim, he puts the frame, which is Islam, and brings a pair of scissors and starts to cut the loose ends so that the frame fits 100% his life.
Nice illustration.
Now, what the people are doing at the moment is they find that there's so many things to compromise in their lives, which they're not willing to let go. So what they do is they tend to distort and reshape the frame. But this is not Islam. So they break this edge, they expand this corner, they use duct tape, they bring wood extensions. But at the end of the day, when you get the frame fitting the picture, it's not the frame we know.
Right.
It's a new religion altogether. So Islam, when it came in the 7th century, when the Prophet ﷺ was given the revelation, slavery existed. So the Byzantines had them, the Persians had them, the Abyssinians had them, everywhere they had. But the difference is that Islam made one source of slavery. In other nations till date, as you've mentioned, white slavery, when people need money. I can go to Cambodia and I meet a farmer who is indebted, and he said, listen, buy my child for $200. You can have my daughter for $500. She's yours. This is not permissible in Islam.
Right.
If you owe me money and you can't pay me, long ago you will become my slave, because this is an eye for an eye. In Islam, this is a no-go. The only source of slavery in Islam is prisoners of war.
I see. This is an eye-opener for me, because when you mentioned the transatlantic slave trade that the European Christians instituted, both Catholic and Protestant Christians, some 10 to 15 million human beings abducted, 30% of which were Muslims. Many of them were Hafezes and accomplished Islamic scholars from West Africa. It was done like harvesting resources.
Correct.
There was no open warfare or declared war. A lot of the treaties and conventions of today didn't apply then, but it was done under for different purposes. It was pure exploitation. You're telling us that even prior to the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, in Islam, it was narrowly defined only to situations of warfare.
Correct. And this is a solution. Islam comes with solutions to problems. See, war is inevitable. This is the cycle of life. And don't tell me about Geneva treaties and the likes, because look around you. Muslims are being attacked worldwide. Non-Muslims are being attacked. Countries have wars among them. Look at World War I, World War II. Muslims had nothing to do with it. They killed hundreds of millions. Look at Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Muslims had nothing to do with it. So war is inevitable. It happens. But what to do when we have prisoners of war?
Hundreds of thousands, millions of people.
Do we simply place them in gas chambers? Do we put them in Guantanamo, not knowing anything of them? Islam gives them an honorable life. It allocates them to Muslim families. Okay, but they will work. They're slaves. Yes, but as we will see in this segment or the following, depends on whenever inshallah we will get to it, we will see how Islam gives them rights in a way that no other religion does.
I look forward to it.
Now, having said that, slavery existed, but through one source, which is jihad, which is the war between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. Now, look at the exit doors from slavery. If you think that Islam encourages slavery, think again. Expiations for so many small and major sins, the first thing you begin with is free a slave. What is this? So I made an oath. I said, Wallahi, I will not have lunch at your home, at your house tomorrow. And then you told me, listen, Sheikh, I'm making a really juicy steak. And I just got that from South Africa, beautiful. And I said, wow, I love steaks. Listen, I made an oath. What should I do? Allah Azza wa Jal tells us the expiation in chapter 6, Surah Al-Ma'idah. You should feed 10 poor people, or clothe them, or free a slave. Okay, so Islam tells you free a slave for what? For just saying Wallahi, for swearing? Yes. So Islam encourages this. A person driving on the highway by accident makes a car accident and someone dies. The expiation, blood money. Plus, he has to free a slave.
Must.
It's a must.
Not like you can do this or another.
No. Blood money is 100 camels worth. And the freeing of the slave is a must. If there is no slaves, then he has to fast 2 consecutive months.
Yeah, I don't think we'd find this in any of the laws of the Protestant or Catholic Christians.
Not only that, there's so many more in the pipeline. A person is prohibited to have intercourse during the daytime of Ramadan while fasting. Someone falls weak and has intimacy with his wife. The first thing to do is to expiate by freeing a slave. A person says in a moment of anger that you, as my wife, I will make you like my mother. I will not have any intimacy with you. And then he regrets it. In expiation, first thing to do is to free a slave. And you go on and on.
Yeah.
So Islam doesn't promote slavery. On the contrary, it encourages that you free the slaves. And imagine if if slavery existed today, you will rarely find slaves because they would be all freed.
So what I hear you saying, describing for us, and we're ready for our break. Number one, it narrows, it limits, it restricts the conditions under which human beings can be taken into slavery. And then secondly, after they've been brought into slavery, also creates multiple outlets for them to be freed.
Correct. In addition to the fact that they have rights. So it's not like a slave, I can whip him, I can amputate his organs, I can kill him, I can bury him and do whatever I want. He's like trash to me. No, he's still a human being, though he's a slave I can sell and buy.
Yeah. Well, that's a great start, Sheikh. Great foundation to continue, and we look forward to this conversation after a short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to With the Prophet. And we are continuing our discussion with Sheikh Azam from Saudi Arabia on the subject of servants who are around the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Let's continue by making a distinction between the status and the roles of servants and slaves. How were they different? Please elaborate on that.
Okay, first of all, a slave is like something that you possess. It's like your car, it's like your couch you sell and buy. Yet he or she has rights. A servant who is a free person, this is totally different. And his rights are far greater than the rights of a slave.
Okay.
He's someone that you must pay on time. He's someone that you may not punish or reprimand like you would do with your slave. See, it's different with your slave. You may treat your slave in a fashion different than a slave, than a free person, due to the fact that you own him. So those who were around the Prophet ﷺ, the vast majority of them were free men. And this is why they were servants. The Prophet did have ﷺ 1 or 2 concubines.
Okay.
But in general, he had servants. And these servants were not with him like the tyrants, the wealthy, the kings.
The picture of the Pharaoh and someone standing over fanning them.
Yes, it's not the same way. They did not do his bodicure and manicure or whatever. No, they had certain tasks. First of all. Second of all, he did not pay them because it was their honor to serve the Prophet ﷺ. Yes, they might have joined in a meal or so because this was his habit that he would, if ever he eats, those around him eat with him. But mainly speaking, he did not have a lot to eat throughout his time because he was not living the life of a king, but rather the life of a servant of Allah, the Almighty. So he had a number of servants.
He had a number of servants. And as you said, the people around him were free people, meaning that there were no slaves that he possessed.
Correct.
Okay. So let me ask you about, getting the testimony from those who were servants under the Prophet would be very valuable in terms of learning about the character of the Prophet towards them. What was his manner, his way? I mean, it's one thing for us to say from the outside, but to have the servant themselves, and we do have such an example, the person of Anas ibn Malik.
Correct.
He was, I understand, served the Prophet in that capacity as a servant for 10 years.
Yes.
What did this brother, Anas, may Allah be pleased with him, how did he characterize the way that the Prophet treated him?
Okay, first of all, how did the Prophet employ Anas? Simply, when the Prophet migrated from Mecca to Medina, Sulaim, who was a wise woman, came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said, "O Prophet of Allah, there is no man or woman in Medina except that they had given you a gift. And I don't have money." So when the Prophet came, everyone brought him a pot, a pillow, some food, etc. as a gift. It's a good gesture. Now she said, "I don't have anything to give you except my son. And my son is 10 years of age. And he's young, but he's learned. So keep him with you and he will serve you, O Prophet of Allah."
I see.
So Anas was one of the Prophet's servants, alayhi salatu wasalam. You can see others, such as Anas was responsible for the Prophet ﷺ errands, clothes, special missions. He trusted him a lot. May Allah be pleased with him. There was Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, who says that 70 plus surahs of the Quran I took directly from the mouth of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet told us, if you want to learn the Quran properly, learn it from four. One of them is Ibn Ummi Abd. This is the nickname of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. So he was the Prophet's ﷺ servant, but his tasks, his job description was to take care of the Prophet's sandals and siwak, which is a toothbrush, to always prepare them, have them ready and carry them for the Prophet when the Prophet was not in need of them. There was Uqba ibn Amir al-Juhani, and he was responsible for transportation in a sense, meaning that he was responsible for the Prophet's mule and his ride whenever he traveled on trips and expeditions. There was also Asla ibn Sharik, and he was responsible for the Prophet's camel. So different rides, different servants. Also there was Bilal ibn Rabah. Now Bilal is well known to have been the Abyssinian slave.
The Bilal.
Yes, who was tortured and then freed by Abu Bakr, and then assumed a prominent role, which is the mu'adhin. He was the one who calls, one of the mu'adhins, who calls for prayer for salat of the Prophet ﷺ. And then you have Abu Dharr al-Ghafari, also one of the Prophet's companions, who used to be the gatekeeper. So the Prophet goes into a garden, he sits at the gate, not allowing anyone to come in without the Prophet's permission. There was Ayman ibn Ubayd and his mother Ayman, and they were all freed slaves. So they came voluntarily to assist and to serve the Prophet ﷺ, and so on. So when you look at, he also had a Jew servant. The Prophet ﷺ had a Jew serving him, a young boy. But, and this shows you the diversity. Now you're the messengers of Allah, and you tell us that we have to be proud of being Muslims, and you have a Jew servant? Then how can we deal with this when nowadays people say you must hate Jews, Christians, anyone who's non-Muslims? Again, the issue of hate and love. People are ignorant.
Yeah.
If I hate something in you, doesn't mean I have to kill you.
Right.
Maybe I hate in you that you are not generous. I came to your house, you did not buy me, make me food for lunch. But I love in you that you pray on time, that you're kind to your wife, that you're kind to your parents, that you are truthful, you never lie, that you're always punctual on time. So the issues of hate and love are there, but we have to balance them. It's not to go to extreme. So when we looked at the Prophet himself ﷺ had a Jew servant, then listen, we have something wrong in our practicing of Islam. All of these servants were not domestic servants in the sense that they come in the home, they mix with the Prophet's wives, they do, no, not at all. Like we see nowadays people doing. So Anas, as coming back to your remark, Anas himself told us that I've served the Prophet ﷺ for 10 years.
Okay.
Never ever I was reprimanded by him in a sense that if he tells me to do something, and after a while, he would not say, did you do what I asked you to do?
No micromanagement.
Yes. And if I don't do something, he would not come to me and say, why didn't you do that? You should have done this and that. So he was like easygoing, alayhi salatu wassalam. And Anas said he never he never hit me.
Okay.
He never abused me. He never cursed me. Now 10 years, you have a kid serving you. The least you would expect is a report, an incident where simply the Prophet lost it. Never ever any of his servants mentioned such a thing.
SubhanAllah, that's a very strong record for on this aspect of the Prophet's life, as the head of a household, as the person who employed, we use the term indentured servants, but I don't even know if that would apply in this case. In any case, they were free people, and they were diverse in their duties and their ethnic backgrounds in the case of the Jewish boy. I'd like to also ask you about it's one thing to have a good manner, to respect the dignity of your humanity, to not micromanage your work, to be trusting, so on and so forth. What about caring for their needs? One area of modern concern in modern times for employment and labor laws is providing for health care, minimum wage, so on and so forth. What example do we have? Was he buying them clothes? Was he providing for their health care, and so on and so forth?
The Prophet ﷺ clearly instructed in so many hadiths.
And I'm sorry, we're short on time, about a minute and a half left.
Okay, inshallah, I'll try to wrap things up. He clearly instructed us to feed them from what we eat, and to clothe them from what we wear. Abu Dharr al-Ghafari was seen once walking with his slave, and he was like wearing a tux with jeans, and his servant was wearing proper pants with a pullover or whatever. So one of the companions said, listen, if you were to wear the suit properly and let him wear something else, that would have matched. See, it doesn't look good.
Right.
So he said the Prophet ﷺ instructed us, ordered us to wear, to clothe them from what we wear, and to feed them from what we eat. And Abu Dharr was doing that to the letter, in the sense that it's not haram. It's not prohibited for you to give him something less, but just to show you the level of piety and the level of righteousness that they had reached, that he took the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ to the letter.
So if I buy 5 or 10 meters of cloth to make clothing, and it's high quality material, I don't have to buy a lower quality for my servants. They have to also make their clothes from the same material I purchase.
This is the sunnah. Not only that, there are hadiths, authentic, that when they cook food, you must give them from that same food because they worked on it.
Not the leftovers or the scraps or the unwanted parts.
And this is what we, alhamdulillah, practice back home in Saudi Arabia. For example, when we send the driver to buy us food from a restaurant, we tell him that this is what we want, our order, and you buy whatever you want.
From the same place.
From the same place. So that he wouldn't feel bad bringing the nice, delicious, smelly food, and then he goes and eats a sandwich.
It's a beautiful standard and a beautiful discussion. Lots of good things that we got from this. Thank you very much.
Barakallah fikum.
We will conclude our discussion for today's episode. Thank you very much for being with us. We look forward to continuing in our next episode another look at servants around the Prophet in this show with the Prophet. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.